By the way, can you guys see all right my screen here? I hope so.
Yep.
All right.
It's all good. That's from another show too. Cool. Hold on. Who's that? What other character says that? You Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
Yeah, that's right. Jake Peralta?
Yeah, I know. It's from something else too.
Huh. I don't recall.
Maybe they copied it from Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Or vice versa. I don't know. Brooklyn Nine-Nine is quite recent, right? Yeah. Oh, I see recording there. We're good, Max?
Max is there, but disappeared.
Okay.
Max, are you there?
Was he using your Mac?
He's recording us looking for him.
He might be using his Mac, so he to restart because of permissions. I don't know.
Maybe. Did it show that it's recording? Oh, he says yes, I can hear. Go ahead.
All right, perfect. All right, cool. All right, so rolling back. Hi, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about ZSH plugins, how it can work smarter, not harder. So the main idea here is to show you how you can actually integrate ZSH plugins into your workflows, and I'm going to be talking about all of that. So first of all, let me just, can I go next? Yeah, perfect. So first of all, this is the agenda for today. So what it is, how it works, and how you can integrate it, and why you should do that. So for what it is, I have just a few words in here that I want to actually use as a starting point to do this conversation. It's not rather a conversation. I'm going to be doing most of the talk. Sorry about that. But first of all, why ZSH, not Bash, not Fish, not any others? Because I chose it, but there's a bigger reason behind that, and it is because of Oh My ZSH, right? So Bash was created in 1980 something. ZSH was created right after, and it has all the features of Bash, but it included some more possibilities for templating, for running better profiling, for your so for better profiles in your terminal login, and because of that, it's easier to create tools for it. It's not to say that with Bash or Fish or other terminals you couldn't do the same. Now, because this is possible to do, there's something called Oh My ZSH, which is community driven, which is a way to load other shell scripts into your ZSH profile. This means that you can actually run code to prepare your terminal to be better and to do things for you. So ZSH supports Autocomplete out of the box, supports Git status out of the box, type fixing. So if you need to, typos fixing. So if you type something wrong, case sensitive, it's not as case sensitive as Bash would be. Anyhow, there are multiple reasons why ZSH was chosen by the community to actually be used by something like this. Now, why? If you use your terminal for work quite a lot, you might know that you might do some tasks multiple times. So if you work with Kubernetes, you might have to list your pods multiple times. If you work with Docker, you might need to run a Docker container multiple times. If you run with building your package for Python, .NET, Java, whatever that might be, you might have multiple ways of running that code or deploying it or trying to communicate with your colleagues. So if you are running an enterprise, you cannot have everybody just doing their own way. Of course, you could, but you might want to try to simplify their lives by creating a plugin, something that gets all these complex workflows, all this automation, and makes it easier to be packaged and for everybody to contribute together and to distribute. So everybody that runs ZSH in their computer because it runs on Windows, on Mac OS, and on Linux. They could just install it, have their functions ready to go, and then your documentation for your team to actually use it and to distribute it would be much simpler. Now, how, you might ask? This is almost done of my slides, and I'm going to actually go back and show you how it actually works. So I'm going to open my terminal here real quick, show you. This is the first, this is a template that I have for ZSH, and I believe this, the terminal is a little bit too small. Let me know if you guys can see it all right. Are the letters too small?
Yeah, no, actually it looks
Perfect. All right. So I'm just going to pull this up here. So this is the first look for ZSH if nobody is actually familiar with. You might have some tools and themes for your bash terminal or for your fish terminal that I can actually show more information in your terminal, but this is the one that I use for ZSH. So the way it works out of the box, it's going to have some new features, new environment variables, some new ways that you can present your terminal. As you can see, it's responsive, and it also shows me created a theme that shows me the current Azure subscription, my Kubernetes context, so it's easier to know where I am at, and it also shows which type of shell I'm using. Because if I wanted, I could just switch to other shells, etc. Now, this is just a terminal, right? So if I type ls, you're gonna get a list of folders. It's just a regular terminal. Now let's look into a regular workflow, right? So let's look into operations team or somebody that needs to work, let's say, with Kubernetes. I'm going to use that as an example, right? So let's say they want to get a list of pods in a namespace. They want to run a pod in a namespace. They want to check whatever volume they have it running there, and that's the piece of workflow, right? So now I don't have any plugins installed. I don't have anything. I have to type it out. So get pods. I'm going to see that there are no pods. And I'm sorry, I'm giving a tip here. It's a plugin. Actually, let me just, yeah, that's fine. So I don't have any pods. So I'm going to have to get the pods and watch for them. So I'm going to just put here watch command to watch for the pods. So it's just going to keep watching the pods. I'm going to open another terminal here on the side, and I'm going to do kubectl isaac. Well, anyhow, you can actually, whoops, kubectl run an echo server in here, and sorry about that. Come on. There we go. You can run a pod, and you're going to see that it's going to be updating. But you saw that I had to actually go back here and look like how I would type it out, and I had to type lots of words. Now I have this running test pod here, and I wanted to see, hey, by the way, let me get these pods here. Let me get the test pod, and let me get the output for that pod, so I can actually see whatever it is, in JSON, so I can actually see everything that is inside of that pod. And I want to know if it has a config map installed, and it has a config map with the storage account. It is tedious, right? So if somebody needs to come in and do this simple task as looking into how to check for volume and to check how something is running, and this is my continuous workflow, there's a lot of work to get down to that path. Now, let's take a step back. How are we going to solve that with ZSH plugins, right? So in ZSH plugins, just like Bash, I don't know if everybody's familiar, but you have in your home folder a bash RC for Bash, or a ZSH RC, which is your profile that runs whenever you log in to ZSH and open your profile. So I'm going to just pull that up here. Nope, that's not how I want it. Okay. So I'm just going to open it up here. All right. So this is my ZSHRC. And this is what I'm talking about, right? About plugins. This is where I'm telling it like which type of plugins I'm actually in this into this terminal, right? So I'm loading them up. And what if I want to add my enterprise custom plugin to help my teammates do the same thing that I did, but much faster? So what we would do here is we're going to define a new test plugin, right? And we're going to create a folder next to all my ZSH's plugins. So let's do make dir cd. That's going to be part of all my ZSH. And it's going to be in custom plugins and test plugin. Whoop. Yeah, it's part of my aliases that I turned off. Sorry. So I'm going to make that directory, and I'm going to be opening that directory for us. Cool. Now, this directory here is going to be defining our plugin. And in here, I already prepared it with a file that is called testplugin.plugin.zsh. This is going to define and tell ZSH that this is a plugin that it can actually run whenever you load that into your profile back into your ZSHRC. So in here, I can just do test plugin, save it out, and now if I reload my terminal, I can just source ZSHRC. It is going to be running that plugin. Now, that plugin doesn't have anything, as you guys probably saw here, so it doesn't really matter. But let's say we're going to do something here. So let's do something simple first, right? So let's say for everybody that runs our plugin, instead of saying sudo, I mean, we're talking about Canada here, right? So it's not very polite to just force someone to do anything. That's a bad joke, sorry. We can do an alias here that says please whenever you actually mean sudo, right? So we want to ask please for a terminal to do something rather than force it. So in here, now if I say please, nothing happens. But if I just go back, reload my terminal, what it does here, and now please becomes sudo. So the idea here is that everything that you load into that plugin, it is going to become part of your terminal as well. That is for exported variables, that is for functions, that is for aliases, everything that you can imagine that actually helps. Now, let's think about that workflow, shall we? So I've typed kubectl get pods, which I already have a plugin, which is the Kubernetes one that just says KGP. But what if I wanted to watch for the pods, right? So I have to type watch pods, etc. And it doesn't have an alias for that. So instead of doing only that, what I can do is alias KGP watch. And that what it does, I can actually just do kubectl get pods and add here watch -d. So what I'm doing here, I'm just creating an alias to help us out to be more effective. And you probably ask yourself, Guy, this is quite simple. Don't worry, we're going to get there. So KGP watch. And, oh, it doesn't work. Of course, I have to reload. So which is source here. This is also tedious. So let's do another alias here, which is reload, which does, okay, so, source, status H, RC. So now we're going to reload using that. So let's do that. So let's do source again. And now whenever we do reload, come on, reload, that does the same as source ZSHRC. So now we're actually going to the workflow of automating the automation part of the workflow for the other groups. Anyhow, so I'm just being meta here. But now I can actually watch like that. So let's do it. So KGP watch. So now if we do a KGP watch, guess what? It just works that way. So we don't have to do watch-d kubectl get pods. Now, in here, we have something a little bit more complex, right? So we're getting a pod, we're getting the JSON output, and we want to get, let's say, the specific volume mounts here. Now put the name of the volume mount and where it's actually mounted at. So this gets a little bit more complex. So let's do something fancy here, right? Actually, if we're doing something fancy, let's do it proper. Sorry, that was a bad joke. So let's do that. So to do that, what you can do, you can test in your terminal first. So we can go to KGP, which we already know, it's still get pods, get the output as YAML, as JSON, sorry. And what we can do is actually get the items of the pods here. And JQ is going to organize it well. And if we want to go further, let's say we give it a pod name, so test. And let's say that for test, I want to just grab the specs of it. And, sorry, spec. And then volume mounts, sorry, containers, which, by the way, I'm doing a if you look at the JSON itself, what we're looking at here, and I know we're delving a little bit too much in Kubernetes itself, but rather you can do that in any JSON outputs. You're just looking at here at the spec, containers, and volume mounts. So we're going to do that. Containers, for all of them, we're going to get the volume mounts. For the volume mounts, we're going to get all of them, and we're going to output a way that shows the name, name, and colon, then the actual mount path, which I believe is just mount path, isn't it? Let me just double check here real quick. Yeah, mount path, good. So we're just gonna do mount path. So now if we run this, guess what? Now we know what is mounted at where for that pod. So instead of doing all that, what I can do, I can actually just grab this and pull it back into our ZSH plugin as an alias. And we're going to do KGP volume vol mount. It's a mouthful, I know, but hey, if it saves us time, why not do it, right? And here I'm going to just have to escape these here for the path. And now if we do a reload, oh, right, I have to reload here. So source, because this is the old profile, right? It's an old terminal. So now if we go back here, KGP vol mount, and the pipe doesn't like it. Sorry about that. Okay. All right. That's not a good example. Sorry about that. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit. You're probably looking at here. I did a wrong thing, right? I'm hard coding here that test. So instead of doing a test, I'm gonna do a function in here, and this function, and then what it's gonna do is actually gonna try to grab that volume. This is not a good example, right? So what you really want to do is to call KP vol mount equals, sorry, not equals, it's a function. So what are going to do it here? And what we're going to do is grab this stuff out here, right here. I think I know what happened there. I was missing the single quote here. Oh, silly me. Sorry about that. And what we can do is just pass the argument of $1, which means whatever you pass as an argument, you can actually run this, right? So let's reload here. And now that we're reloaded, we can do KGP vol mount and do the test pod in here, which honestly should have worked. I'm probably missing something here. Okay. And the good part here is that if we really want, we can actually just keep playing with this. in such a way that we can just reload, test it, and get the proper command working. Oh, that's not great. That is definitely not great. Huh. Sorry about that, guys. Something's wrong with my terminal. Oh, is it because I did this alias? Where's the participation? You guys should have seen that. No, kidding. All right. I'm joking, guys. Sorry. So, not happy, is it? Oh. Cute. Okay. That's frustrating.
Is it not good at all?
This morning, but I'm doing I apologize for that. I am gonna, for example, back working because it should. But I have other I wanted to show you how, but this is definitely odd. Yeah, I can hear you.
Sorry, do you need the
hello, Max?
function? Do you need the arguments for the function?
Max?
Hello, we hear you.
Yeah, I just brought it here.
I think he means you don't have to put them in the brackets. You don't have to define them.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't have to define them. No, not this way. The function here is here, really, which is weird. I mean, if you guys probably know ZSH and Bash too. In theory, this should have been fine. Okay, fine. Well, anyways, so I want to show you guys something else. I have here that is a process that you try to put to make sure that it works in a sense that you have a function, something that is automated, and something that a team can work. So what I have here on the other side is actually an example of what I've done in the past, and I want to bring that over. And you can see that to work. And once this is established in some way, go to terminal and do git clone and clone that piece of code into the custom plugins list. And this is the important part, right? So once everything is here, what you get is actually a place where you can reference all the plugins, and anybody in that is your team member can just go back to their ZSHRC and import that. So right now, as you can see, I have this bunch of functions that I've created in the past. It's some things that you might want to get reports in your clusters, or work with Flux, things that you might do in your enterprise, you GitHub and Kubernetes and containers. And what you would do, you just clone that to your custom folders, and once you are ready, all you have to truly do is, well, I need to open this ZSHRC, don't I? Yep. Once you're good, all you need to do here is import that. And when it's here, you can reload. And now all of those functions are available, readily available for us. So you can do something a little funny, like whenever it's happy about reloading. Share my screen is not making my computer happy. All right, let's force reload there. All right, something funny like a random Docker, which just grabs random names for something, or something a little bit more powerful, like let's say Azure CLI. So if for somebody that works with Azure or any other cloud provider, you know that you're going to have to be selecting AWS accounts, Azure accounts. What you have to do is AZ list, account list. From here, you can actually go grab a table of all the values, and you're going to grab a selection of the list, and then you select that to actually go to your profile. But instead of doing that, what I did to make it easier for everybody, I have this AZ account function. And what it does, it uses a couple of really cool features, right? So I can actually just pass along my account that I want to select, or I can actually select it from the list of accounts that I have that my account has available. So as you probably can imagine, I have a bunch of accounts, right? So let me just so search for which one I wanted to add, copy, paste, and do as the account set subscription. So instead, what I did, I created this AZACC. What it does, it grabs the same list of accounts, pipes that out to something called fuzzy search, FZF, and I can actually type whatever subscription I want. So dev global or PaySago global here, and it just finds for me. And if I press enter, what it does is just selects the one that I want. Same thing for groups. So if with Azure, you might be familiar with AZ to get the groups, and if you wanted to ask default, there's going to be a bunch of well, I have to re-authenticate. That's not great. Okay, dev. Yeah, it's one of the powerful things. I wanted to show something cooler for you guys, but something's going on with my profile. I apologize for that. But if you select the group here, what it does, it actually grabs the user group that you want, and then you can select it as a default, and then you can only get the resources from that one group. Now, I didn't do anything that it's not out there that you couldn't do yourself. But as you can see, there are multiple steps to do so, right? You might want also to create a bunch of special aliases for your teammates, or let's say you have something that needs to be built with a special script that is in a specific folder that it is the well-defined place for everybody to actually define, and this is how you would do it, right? Now, this is all good. So how you distribute, you just grab that value of your ZSA folder, right, with plugins. You publish that into GitHub, and something that is even fancier, you can get something called Autocomplete, which is yet another plugin that just asks you to update your plugins in a few days or whenever there's an update. And how it does that, it's yet another plugin that just checks for the Git status of each of your plugins. Again, this is all Git. So if you go to any of the plugins, and say the one, you're going to see up to date. But if somebody was to push up, for it, the auto update. So you can definitely use that to distribute functions that you want your employees to have that are going to be easier for them to be always up to date. So if you found a bug, if somebody else did find a bug, they would be able to open up a request, fix it, and then distribute for you right on the spot. And this is the power of ZSH. You can do pretty much anything you want with that, and make sure that it is always working for everybody. Again, this is part of understanding your process, understanding what your team needs, understanding how you can make their lives easier. Try to run fit to just a plugin that helps them out. You're putting me, Guy, but we don't have ZSH. We run everything on Windows. We run everything on PowerShell, or we have a custom so what is that? Oh my ZSH, right? Oh my ZSH is the it's the, I'm not going to say that it's software because it's not, right? It's just a bunch of scripts that are loaded into your profile, sets up some variables like such that run once you actually the plugin from this array. So all it is really is just a group of scripts to help you to grab plugins. Do you need OMZSH to work? No. You could potentially just source out all of those scripts here yourself, but then you wouldn't have something that streamlined, right? And if you don't like it the way it is here, there are other managers for this plugin manager that you could manage plugins and find other plugins on the internet. I'm going to send out a link later for you guys. There's something called the Awesome ZSH Plugins GitHub page where you can find plugins for pretty much anything you want. For Philips Hue lights all the way to GitHub Actions, right? So options are insane when you think about that, right? This is here as a framework for you to build upon, right? And yeah, and this framework is also available, and this is what I wanted to end with. And this is also available not only on all my ZSH. You could potentially do that with PowerShell and Windows. If your team is not really used to any with Bash or ZSH or Fish, you can actually use something called All My Posh. It's based upon the same standards of the framework of All My ZSH. You can use your Bash profile and create something similar. You can use Fish. Fish is also another type of terminal. And the idea here is to use this type of framework to distribute commands that automate the work of your employees of your entire company. Again, think about repetitive tasks, complex workflows, and well, think about repetitive tasks and complex workflows. This is going to make it a lot easier to distribute and make your work more efficient. That's the whole idea behind it. I am at 40. Max said I was at 40 minutes. Do you guys have any questions? I can try to. All right, keep going. Okay, cool. So I didn't have much more. I kind of wanted to actually make more plugins to work here with you guys. So I'm going to try to keep doing something a little bit cooler. So after this part here, I was going to do 45 plus. Perfect. Okay. So all I wanted to do here, I'm still a little bit frustrated that this guy's not working. But let's say you have a workflow that you need to know what is your outbound IP address to actually add to a firewall, right? So let's say you work in a company that wants to add the outbound IP address to the firewall, so you can actually go and join it. Not saying for you to do that, but if you wanted, so what you could do is just do my IP or something like that. And what you could do is just run something like curl ifconfig.me, which is just a service that does that. And what you can do is just reload again. And what you do is my IP, and you grab your outbound IP. Now, what is even cooler here is this is just a function that is available now in your whole environment that you're running. So you could potentially use that in scripts as well. So that's the power of it. Now, I've talked a lot about plugins, and I thought I was going to have time only to show you this type of plugins of scripts, but I'm going to show you something else, which is even cooler, which is the theme. Here we have a StarSH Starship theme, but you don't have to run only this template, this theme. You can run pretty much any theme that actually shows any type of information that you want. But I'm going to show you what is the power of it, right? So right now we're seeing the current folder, what we have in Git, which Azure subscription we're at, and what Kubernetes environment we're connected to. But if we really go to its configuration, and again, this theme runs just like you would into any other plugin in SH. It is just loaded here, and yeah, so you can either load from the ZSH theme on all my ZSH, or you could completely, there you go, Starship. So you could completely just evaluate whatever Starship is. So all that it's doing here is just running a source of a bunch of files of Starship to actually push over and then take over the control of the ZSH environment and show something cool. So most of those themes, they provide you some sort of framework in their own scripts, so they can set some variables and you can show that somewhere. So I'm going to give you an example of how that would look like. So if you were to go and check the config starship.toml, this is just an example, of course, you could potentially just set anything you want in the format of your terminal to show it. And because it is just a script that runs and checks for, let's say, my AZ subscription that shows my subscription, all that is doing really is a cat on the access token, runs JQ, grabs whatever information you need, and presents that out in such a way that this variable here is set here on my terminal. And that little fancy joke that I did here is just a custom fancy output that I say that whenever there's a variable called fancy that is set to true, it comes out as such. We could do anything with in here as well to say like, let's just call it a test here, and whenever we does that, we could try to echo test in here. So it's just going to show test in it. So this is the part that actually shows in the variable outside here. So this is what it does is the Kubernetes, right? So it just outputs with the current context and the format on how it's going to be presented at. And when is just whenever you want it presented. That this is the way you would work to actually select it. So let's just do this test here. So the test is going to only run whenever, let's say, I have a variable called a super variable, and that super variable is true or set. We're going to be able to format here, present that test here as, or even better. So command, who am I? And when, it's always going to be there, it's going to be true. And the format is going to be, just say, I am, and then the output, as red. So what it's doing here is just grabbing the output of the command, who am I, which is myself here, and then it sets that output here in red for me to output. And then I can just reference that back into my shell, like so, which is just a variable that it will set every time it reloads my command line. Be careful with that. You don't want to overload your terminal, because that might take a little bit too long to run. But here it is. You can just input whatever output you want to your terminal to actually get more information out of it. So I'm showing you just an example, but let's say I have another command line interface that I've created that is for the purpose of automating my work. And if I actually set it to show, it actually shows whatever project I'm working on. And if I turn it off, it just reloads with whatever information I wanted here. This is how powerful it is, right? So you can mix and match whatever you want. Versions, yes. So Max is asking if there are versioning in those plugins, and if you can have control over what version the plugin uses. You can, because again, this is all running based on the files that you have in your computer. If you truly wanted to run a specific version of something, let's say I feel I wanted to add something in here, or if I wanted to test my own version, to have my own branch of it. That's what you do. You just branch it. Again, this is just Git. So what you could do here is you run your own version of branch. You can always get the updates from the master or main branches, but you will have the only version of whatever function you might need. So I can do, let's say, a fix build or something. And in this branch here, it would be specifically only for the people that are pulling this branch, and the auto update would just pull for them from that specific branch. Now, the management of that version itself, it gets a little bit more complicated, because you have to pull from the main branch whatever are the new versions, but you can still potentially just be always up to date. The best idea really is to have people following the main branch and controlling whoever can actually merge from their pull requests before everybody gets to pull that to their own accounts, right? That's the main idea on how you manage that. The distribution of it. There are tools that you could potentially use to solve that, like Antigen, which is to manage that. But that would actually mean a third-party software that is actually a software that manages that, and it gets a little bit more complex. So for the simple purpose of doing functions that should always work and should not break the workflows of everybody else, you want to make it as simple as possible, but still giving value, right? So that's the idea behind it. All right, and this is what I had prepared for today, guys. I know that we have more time now, so I guess I'll open up for any questions, really. One thing that I wanted to show you guys then, if you don't have any questions, so I don't know if you've always had this type of problems, but you always have to automate some silly work that you want to know if I'm running out of memory into a cluster in Kubernetes or anything like that. You can always do functions that are quite powerful here that can actually do something like that. So if you want to check it out, or there are many plugins out there that can help you with that. But this is an example on how powerful things can be, right? So I have this function called kreport that actually grabs whatever information I have from the, well, this is my local Docker cluster. That is not going to be great. So if I go to another cluster that actually has some workload, P0D404. So this actually has some float here. what you can do here is actually load all that information into a streamlined report and know exactly, let's say, how much RAM of my cluster I'm using, right? Or how many CPUs, etc. And it's a lot easier to calculate how many pods or system pods you're running. It's easier to create those kind of workflows. You could potentially create a dashboard with that, but then I guess at that point you're talking about power user views. You should be using our tool for monitoring to actually do something like that. But it's something doing.
And of course, you could filter this by namespace.
Yeah.
Just give me the pods of a certain service.
Yeah. So you can do, let's say, here for the specific space that I'm at. Yep.
I would like this very thing.
Yeah, it's fun. So this is part of my oh my gish. I know it's funny because it's but it's I have a bunch of functions that I put out there that I use in my day-to-day life that try to help me out with stuff that I do at work. Most to help me be efficient, right? So some issues I've had with encoding in the past, especially with JQ, that doesn't play well with some types of JSON in Azure. For Helm itself to actually get logs for the Helm operator. Oh, cool. So if you want to, let's say, attach yourself to a pod, to inside of that cluster, inside of the namespace, bada bing, bada boom. That's exactly what it does. So you just attach yourself with whatever image you want, right? So, and that could be any image really. So you just grab whatever that you want. Oh, yeah, sorry, it's deleting still. Yeah, it's still deleting. Okay, but whenever it deletes, you can just, run, let's say, a Python pod to test something inside of a cluster. And this is very powerful in the idea that the workflows that you usually do that might take you an hour to get to this a certain point to generate a report, to grab any information from a pod, from an account, you lose time considerably, especially if you have a well-defined documentation to workflow that actually tells you how to do everything from that perspective. So it's always great to, whenever you distribute this, you have a really good documentation that explains everything that your commands actually do. So it's always interesting to do so. Of course, I'm showing quite specific Kubernetes workflows because this is the most common to my day-to-day life. But you're going to get a lot more workflows that are for other tools from other people that are used to doing other things in their terminals, right? You can get cluster names, accounts, do math into a specific app that you have, a specific CLI that you have. Let's say Figlet is one. I don't know how many of you actually knows Figlet, but if you type in your terminal Figlet, if you have it installed, of course, and you just do test, it just types out test like the ASCII stuff. But if you wanted to centralize something, so is F for Figlet, and then I can do alias F center Figlet -C, so it can centralize stuff. So, oops, I can just do F center, and then I can just type whatever I want. It's going to be centralized. So, again, power is all yours to automate whatever workflow you need, right? Git, if you want to pull your everything from GitHub, you can make alias for that. You want to, if you always forget how to, let's say, do a git reset hard on your branch, you can create an alias that does the entire thing for you, or to go back to the last version. Again, possibilities are endless. Most of the examples that I just told you are actually available in my Gish, but whatever workflow that you have, you can always create your own and publish it out there as open source or for your own company, right? So what I see a lot of people doing is that they create something specific for their work, for the tools they use, and they distribute inside of Azure DevOps, GitHub Enterprise as a private repo for their company to pull. But that's the beauty of it, right? And
So can I use ZSH terminal in VS Code?
you definitely can. Right here, I actually have this very thing. So right there.
Nice.
Yeah. So you just have to, I believe you have to go through the settings of the terminal in Visual Studio, and you have to configure it to use a specific. So my default shell is ZSH. So Visual Studio Code out and by default just loads whatever login of your shell that you have as default. So if you're Windows, it's just going to load PowerShell. But if you want, you can actually use a different type of executable here to actually run your commands, right? And if you wanted, you could use that in WSL, so Windows Subsystem for Linux, and just execute it right there as well.
Yeah.
Speaking about the topic of like Windows versus Mac, so I had read that like Cedron would be a good sort of like manager for Fish, or it's well, like what do you recommend for for when it's all good, but yeah, just your recommendations.
If it's running anything in a terminal, Windows has a little bit of a weird situation in how the terminal works. It's getting a little bit better with the Windows terminal. I would definitely run like ZSH because it is maintained a lot faster. So if you have any issues with the communication between how your terminal is it's gonna present something from your system, I would use ZSH. Now, if you're talking about management of plugins, that section is a little bit more complicated. I myself don't use any plugin managers for ZSH for the sole reason that I feel it slows down my terminal. I don't know if you understand, if you felt that your terminal from press enter to actually getting back control to your terminal, it takes a while. So I do prefer to minimize that overload to try to make it faster. Now, if you want to check it out, I do recommend something called Antigen. That is a great plugin manager that actually helps to reload much faster as well. It's just a matter of preference at that point, though. I don't know if I answered your question.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, I was just wondering about Bash terminals or shell terminals for Windows.
Right. Yeah. So Windows itself, it's not native ZSH, right? You're going to have to run
Right.
Windows Subsystem for Linux. But if you want to have something similar to this, there's something called Oh My Posh. Oh My Posh. I'm going to try to show you here. God, I cannot type. And it functions similarly. The idea of having plugins is similar. It does not mean that it works in the same way, right? So not two things are going to be the same way. But the concept of how you actually implement your terminal and everything, it is similar, right? And you can install it using Chocolate, and it's going to be native on Windows and the whole shebang. And it's going to introduce actually some real cool autocomplete features from ZSH and some that you usually get from other terminals, also in your PowerShell immediate window. Now, if you're talking about native support and active communities, honestly, this is not as well maintained as a ZSH terminal, because naturally this is something that is less used nowadays, right? So everybody's kind of moving towards Linux-based systems for the workloads, right? So, but the possibility is there, right?
Right, great. Thanks.
Yeah, anytime. And if you guys have time to do some research, Zsh Plugins, to look into whatever to this repo here. It's awesome, Zsh Plugins. It's definitely going to give you some ideas of what is possible. You're going to find there anything from let's see, Ansible, all the way to Presto, to let's say something silly, I don't know. But you can find actually some real good plugins here that could definitely help you out, and also themes that of course I'm showing my own, and it would take way too long here to show all these themes that are available. But for each workflow, of course, there are going to be different versions for anybody to really use, right? And I always recommend, whenever you get your own computer, whenever you get you start to set it up, you have to be, well, again, personal experience and opinion, but you have to get comfortable with whatever terminal and whatever tools you have, and setting something up that feels familiar, that it helps you do more with fewer keystrokes, makes you work a lot faster, smarter, and in less steps. And that's the whole purpose of this, right? Trying to make the amount of time from a start of a task to finish to get as short as possible. And I think I can put this here in the chat as well, if anybody really wants to take a look. But I definitely recommend that. This is the themes, and also the PowerShell. Oh, my posh. Yeah. Yep, now I can.
All right, my mic is back. I can talk again.
Beautiful.
All right, thank you.
I was answering the door, so I was trying to get back here too. But
Totally fine.
so, I mean,
Thank you. Okay, so
that's really cool. It's very cool.
it is. I'm just so they're basically using Git as a way to share the tree-based settings, I guess. So there's nothing like there's no package feeds or that will do it for you? Can you run a package into an npm and distribute it that way, or anything else?
You could.
Yeah.
The workflows that are available that do something like that, they're not quite there yet.
Okay.
I'm gonna be honest. Even though this is quite old already, I haven't used any package managers for those ZSH plugins that made me happy with it.
Mhm.
But there are options out there, that's for sure.
Cool.
It's it's just a matter of it's going to be a little bit of a wild ride to do so. I still believe that the GitHub workflow still works well.
It's not very scalable though. Again, if you use GitHub packages, maybe GitHub repos, not really.
Right.
But again, I see your point, right? Again, a small team, it definitely works, right? If you try to scale it,
Sure.
it's just complicated, right?
Yeah, it depends on the size, and then we're going to have the conversation about micro and macro. Yeah. It's how big do you want this plugin to be, right? You want to be very specific into things that this plugin does, and in such a way that there's going to be small enough for the turnaround time of fixing or adding anything to it to be faster, right?
By the way, can you nest the plugins?
If you want to use from a command from a plugin into the next plugin, yes.
Yeah. So yes. I want to create my plugin based on your plugin and take all the credit, for example.
You could. It gets a little bit more complex because the way that the plugins are loaded, it might not be the easiest to achieve that, but you definitely could, yes.
Okay. Again, I'm more curious about the nesting part, right? It's just, can you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I wouldn't recommend though. Being completely honest with you, the way that the functions are loaded, and if you want to distribute, people might not be loading them in the right way, and it starts to get complicated, right? And then, well, you might want to be careful.
No, I understand that. But again, if you want to scale it, then you're gonna think that
That's
way.
fair.
Right? Yeah.
That's fair. Yeah, I see it. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. You said that all of this is in your. Can you put the link to GitHub? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, this is my Geesh plugin that I use, and I usually use for people to share to people.
Mm-hmm.
I'll put it right here into the chat.
Thank you.
There it is.
And for those of you who don't know what ABAC is, you're very lucky people.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. I missed that part, the whole part about the Starship. What was that about?
This was I was talking about themes and the actual power of adding more functionality to your terminal itself.
Okay.
So the way that it loads and stuff and all. I'll share the link of if the chat allows me to send anything. Looks like I'm locked out of the chat here. I don't know what's going on with my computer today. But there it is. But the way that you present the output in your of your terminal here, you can change that to match whatever functionality you want for your company, right? So if you have any specific tool, let's say ABAC, as you just said, right, and you wanted to let people know which project they're inputting their timesheets at, then you can have something like this. So they would know exactly where they're inputting their timesheets at, right? So they don't have to go back and forth from the terminal to actually try to define that. And it's just as easy to remove it as well. So you can play around with that as well.
Okay. Got it. Cool.
Now, if you want to look into these themes specifically as well, I'm going to share right here with you guys. But I do recommend not everybody is fond of this style that I have here. I'm going to share it with you, but feel free to actually Google it. There's Spaceship and Minimal and all other themes that are that fits workflows to other people well as well.
Sounds great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you for letting me. Yeah.
I was going to ask, does anybody have any questions? I know they left, but he muted. He forgot to turn off the video, so we know he left. Anybody has any other questions?
How does the TOML file like gets incorporated with the theme aspect?
Right. So it depends on the thing that you're using. I gave you a specific example. So there are multiple type of things specifically for Starship. Right here. All right, there we go. Specifically for Starship, the way that is actually initiated has its own CLI, an init command with ZSH, and what it does, it injects a list of instructions in for whenever you press enter, you go for the next prompt, and it loads it. So what it does, it injects those functions at the end of your command. So before you actually get the visualization of your prompt, and then it just uses from that TOML configuration right here. It just uses from here to actually build your terminal theme, right? So if I go here, it's going to be a lot of to actually show. I don't know if it's going to be Starship init ZSH. So if you look in here, what it really does is just grabs this binary here and then initializes it with a full init again, and it just sources that out with a bunch of instructions to actually run and output this based upon whatever values are passed along into this configuration file, right? Now, this is just the way that Starship made it work, but there are other things, and this can get kind of crazy, honestly. So if I go to, come on, themes. So if I go here, there are a bunch of out-of-the-box themes as well. Spaceship. So there's a spaceship prompt as well, which had a different approach for it, right? So this one actually created something called sections, and it can create whatever sections you want here that actually show whatever you want into this order method. But the idea is the same, right? So it just injects some scripts for the load of your output of your theme, and then it just creates the functions that are going to be injected before your load time. So depends on the plugin, but the idea is usually the same, right? Does that make sense?
Right, got it. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, no worries. Which is actually pretty cool. So I've created one for Azure, both for Spaceship and for Starship. Both of them, they have these functions here that do a bunch of stuff. Azure makes it way more complicated than it should for us to get our current context. But you could do that for any theme, really, right? It's just a matter of extensibility that they provide. I would recommend both of them, right? Spaceships and Starship, they are really good into injecting those fast. You can actually go grab Golang information, Haskell, the actual output of jobs that are running currently, a bunch of things. Oh, I even have it installed here for PowerShell on my Mac OS. So I can use Mac PowerShell here and still output the same stuff from Starship as well. But this is a wrapper of a wrapper. It delves into another conversation, really.
Is there a reason why you're not using Fish? I believe Fish has more maybe like autocomplete options.
Well, Fish has some more autocomplete options, but as you can see, I do have those installed into ZSH. I don't know if you saw that. And I even go further and it integrates some features from Fuzzy Search. There are plugins that works the exact same way as Fish, which I know it's I'm adding more features to actually make it look like Fish, but I do enjoy quite a bit the extensibility of ZSH. That's why I chose it personally to use ZSH, right? And because it's more widespread now with the whole macOS supporting it natively.
I see, thanks. Yeah, I saw the
Yeah.
autocomplete just now.
Yeah. Again, you can definitely do it with Fish. It's just a matter of perspective of community, right? In this day and age that where open source is getting more and more widespread, the support of how many people are actually going to be working on the supports of those plugins and add more functionalities to it. And with the whole native support for ZSH into some distros in Linux now on Mac OS, it makes it be way more active. That's for sure. But that's a good question. Thank you.
Are there more questions? All right.
Cool.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you very much. It was
Yeah.
great.
Anytime.
I'm gonna put it on the YouTube channel. I think Dave put the link. It is, I think, on the Meetup page somewhere. And again, if you Google it on the YouTube, you'll find it. Again, thank you, Guy. The next session is going to be on the second Thursday of October, which I think is 10 or 14, I forgot, but it's going to be second Thursday of October. The session is going to be on Octopus, and it's actually going to be done by a guy that we used to work with, who is now VP of delivery in Octopus. So it's going to be a really, really good, really hands-on session on Octopus. So I'm looking forward to that. And as always, if there are any topics that you would like to hear on or present on, please let us know. This is a user group. We are here to facilitate. We are open to any suggestions, any topics. Please let us know. And again, if there's something you would like to hear on, but again, you couldn't find anybody, please let us know the topic, and the chances are we'll be able to find somebody, because we've been in this business long enough and we know quite a few people, and chances are we can find somebody. Again, thank you all for attending. Thank you, Guy. We'll see you on the next second Thursday of the month, which will be in October. Sure. Thank you again. And please, again, let us know any feedback, and stay in touch over Meetup. Thank you again. Bye.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Max.